Good evening, and welcome to the March 11th British Empire Study Group meeting. And tonight we have, we're starting a little differently. We are going to have Mr. Robin Woodruff present. Robin Woodruff is International Sales Director for Rand McNally, and he wrote The Prisoners of Boer War in Ceylon in the Dutch East Indies. And I think I really butchered that, but he is our speaker tonight. The British Empire Group's next meeting will be on April 15th, and that's going to be a really interesting meeting with the Collectors Club, the South African Philately Club, the South African Collectors Society, and the Cape and Natal Study Circle. And Keith Klugman will be presenting his Victorian Natal exhibit at two different times, 10:30 a.m. and 5:30 a.m. So those of you in Great Britain don't have to stay awake so late. So a couple of things that I'd like to do and go over because it's a little different tonight. We are not going to have question and answer right afterwards. What we are going to do though is once we bring everybody over, we will do a question and answer session. If you are not comfortable or you just want to put your questions in the chat, that works well. Some people might find those closed captions obnoxious. If they are obnoxious to you and you don't want to see them, you could hit the live transcript button, which is on the bottom, the lower right-hand section, and that will turn them off. If you don't see the little CC button, click on the more and it will appear. So this meeting is being recorded. So, act accordingly when you come over on this side. And if you miss it, you could go ahead and see it again. And as always, following the meeting, there will be a social. So tonight, again, is Mr. Robin Woodruff. He's presenting on the prisoners of the Boer War on St. Helena in Freemasonry. And Robin, at this time, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Initially, I was an ambulist, a walking stick collector, and had sticks going back to the 1600s with ivory, porcelain, and gold knobs. I would visit Hank Tarrant's auctions in Boston twice a year to purchase these. However, when the friend who got me into collecting in the first place sold me this piece that's shown here, my interest became items made by the prisoners of the Boer War, 1899-1902, whilst they were in camps in South Africa, and when banished, that horrible word, banished, to St. Helena, Ceylon, India, and Bermuda. And it's relatively common knowledge amongst those having an interest in Freemasonry and the Boer War that British officers, Lord Roberts, General Kitchener, and men of the lower ranks, including Winston Churchill, Rudyard Kipling, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, attended Freemasons' lodges while serving in South Africa. Ars Quator Coronatum, Transactions of the Coronati Lodge, number 2076 refers. Recorded in the Masonic Illustrated and other articles that certain members of the British forces responsible for overseeing the prisoners attended two lodges on the island together with Boer senior officers. It would appear, however, that not a great deal of information is available in the general domain about the lower ranking Boers and men of other nationalities who fought with them, and given the term their associates in some instances of this work, who also attended the meetings as prisoners of war and late prisoners of war after peace had been declared and whilst they were waiting to leave the island. Whilst the lack of information is understandable, it is considered important to research this subject and record for posterity their involvement in this aspect of life while being banished from South Africa. Furthermore, in order to show how friendships can be formed and prevail, even under the most unusual and difficult circumstances of captor and captive. And the word banished is there, and To banish is to expel or to relegate to a country or place of authoritative degree, condemned to exile. Thinking. This is the island of St. Helena, and it really is awesome when you're cruising along, as I did in the first twice of going there, on the old RMS St. Helena, and you're traveling along the side of this wonderful piece of rock at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the cliff stands 750 feet above you. It's incredible, unbelievable. It was Jones' proposal that we should include a little postal stationery, philatelic stationery in this. We have a piece here that was sent as a reply postal card from the United States of America, and being addressed to Philadelphia, written on the 8th of March 1900, Robert P. Pooley, the US Consul on St. Helena. And he writes, the only papers or journals published here are the St. Helena Guardian newspaper and the church magazine. So if you didn't take your own postal or material to read with you, you didn't have a lot when you got there. What is Freemasonry? Freemasonry is an esoteric society only in that it is certain aspects are private. Freemasons state, anyway, this item that square and compasses joined together, and it's the most single identifiable symbol of Freemasonry. And this piece is actually made by a prisoner of the Boer War on St. Helena. And the square and compasses represent architect's tools and are used in the Masonic ritual as emblems to teach symbolic lessons. This piece by POW and has a silver 2.5 shilling coin added, and above that is an inscribed silver diamond-shaped decoration with Old Rock Lodge, and on the square, GT Mold St. H. And this was made by POW 5985 George Jacobus Moll, age 34, from Blackplatz, Verde, and was captured at Elandslager on the 21st of the 10th, 1899. He was sent to St. Helena on the Bavarian on the 1st of January 1901. And here we see a picture of the surrender at Paardeberg when Lord Roberts and General Kitchener met for the first time, and this was the first opportunity that they had to confirm they were Freemason brothers. And that was on the 31st of May 1902. Initially, General and Mrs. Cronje were held on board the HMS Doris with their grandson, and that was in Simonstown Harbour. And here we see the ship on the left-hand side, and on the right is General Cronje in his large hat with a cross on it, and his grandson is in the centre. These 3 chairs, beautiful pieces, possibly Spanish, very difficult to tell where they came from originally. They're inscribed with dolphins, I believe they are. And out of the 3, one of them has been very badly damaged in the seat, as if old General Cronje probably sat in it with his sharp penknife in his back pocket or whatever. But it's actually inscribed on the leg of each of them, HMS Doris 1900. And the note that came with them in Dutch, translated, reads, "These chairs were used on board HMS Doris by General Pete Cronje's wife Hester, and given as a gift to use on St. Helena in the year of our Lord 1900. And there's dear old Mrs. Cronje on the right-hand side. And this is a medal box of Guard James Seymour. Probably he was a Freemason as well. And unfortunately, you're not able to see some of the very nice brass decoration on the front. His British Service Medal is within the box, and his cap badge, also his St. Helena Service Medal, and his service record. Interesting piece of collector's item there. The camps to hold the POWs had not been prepared when the first batch of prisoners of a considerable size were captured at the Battle of Elizlager on the 21st of October, 1899. The first group of 189 POWs, including foreigners and 4 achterrijers, which are the black back riders or personal assistants as they were, arrived in Simonstown on the 2nd of November, 1899. Commandant Adolf Scheel, the German commandant, and Captain Veseluel de Witthammer, founder of the Hollander Corps, were amongst them. They were temporarily placed on board the armed corvette HMS Penelope that had been anchored in Simons Bay Harbour as a receiving ship. Now, some of the information on that page is given by the Wits University Library, where it's being held in Captain de Witthammer's files, and they have asked me to mention that they wouldn't really want it published elsewhere. The other prisoners were being ferried towards the Penelope, as we see here on the left-hand side, and on the right there are some Boer gentlemen, which in the Afrikaans word Boer means farmer, and these gentlemen look to be elderly farmers. I wouldn't think there's any one of those under 45 or 50 years of age. Incredible. This was made on the Kildonan Castle in Simons Bay in December 1900 to January 1901, which was the period of time that the prisoners were actually on there before camps were built on land. And here we see the tented accommodation at Greenpoint racetrack, I should say, and Bellevue Camp in Simonstown on the right-hand side, and 2 considerable sized camps holding these prisoners of war. On the left here, we see a tray made by prisoner number 2577, Johannes Jordan in Bellevue Camp in 1900. And on the right, a POW artist representation of Greenpoint Track Camp on a postal cover. And this was painted by Boer POW number 15,955, Isaac Joubert, age 65. And this is while he was in Greenpoint Camp, and it was mailed on the 17th of July 1901, bearing a censor mark. And it's quite amazing how they've actually drawn the green point over the top of the camp like an arrow. It's quite an incredible piece. Okay, this is a cover from Hilversum. It's franked with a 25-cent Queen Wilhelmina adhesive and tied by Hilversum CDS, dated the 1st of December 1899. And another adjacent. It's addressed to Captain Veseluel de Witthammer, and it goes on to say there, which we've dealt with, and to all other POWs aboard the Penelope near Cape Town. So this was quite an interesting letter, and the censor has actually written on the back, kindly tell your correspondents that the reports of bad treatment are erroneous. Interesting. And here we have a cover to Captain de Witthammer on board the Penelope, GPO Cape Town, 24th of January, and another presentation piece. And the cover is on the left-hand side, as you'll know. But the piece on the right-hand side is beautifully carved and is like a tray with flared edges, inscribed with his name on and the HMS Penelope, but it's actually attached on either end to a horse or 2 horses. And it stands proud of a table, if it was standing on a table with whatever inside it, biscuits, cakes, whatever. And here we see the camps in the recreation ground, the Naval recreation ground, which was where the prisoners were put after they moved onto onshore camps. And it was felt by members of the church and Prime Minister locally and other personnel that these guys really should not be in such terrible accommodation while they're as prisoners of war. So they moved them alongside the water's edge with tented accommodation. As said, the prisoners were initially held in camps at Greenpoint and Bellevue in Simonstown, but because of the large number of them, it was likelihood of them being freed by others, it was decided to banish them to overseas locations, these being 5,860 to St. Helena, others to Ceylon, India, and Bermuda. And we have 13 ships that took them to St. Helena, the Milwaukee being the first one on the 3rd of April 1900. The last one, the Britannic, on the 19th of February 1902. Arrival St. Helena, 27th of February 1902. 5,860 on board. This, on the left-hand side, is a tin carrying case of the formal headwear of Captain Weber of the Milwaukee. It was the first of the 13 sailings carrying POWs, and on the right-hand side is the actual formal headwear. Beautiful piece. And this is a gentleman, but this is POW Hallman from the Bavarian, and it sailed on 2 occasions, as I mentioned, with 1,039 prisoners aboard on one, and 1,337 on the second sailing. So it was a considerably large ship of Canadian origin. And this is the island of St. Helena, and Deadwood Camp is just above where this meeting is being recorded. Across the middle is in front of it. And Jamestown, the only town on the island, is above on the left-hand side, whilst Broadbottom Camp, which was the second camp built much later, is down at the bottom of this label in here, and it says Broadbottom Boer Prisoners Camp. Left-hand side about 2/3 of the way down. I think I'll skip over the censor's name. FWA, which is Frederick William Alexander, Chiefish Censor. EBW, which was Edward Bowell Walton. JHMB was Brown. There was a Lieutenant Maul, Charles de Burgh, Captain Marling from one of the regiments, the Oxfordshire Regiment or Berkshire Regiment, I believe, very close to where I live. And the bottom one is the interesting one. This is von Ahlefeldt, who was Convilium Voldemar Baron von Ahlefeldt Ludwigsburg. He was German by birth, I believe, but became chief censor. And I actually wrote a booklet on him not long ago. And here we see two pieces of philatelic work. The top one on the left-hand side, prison camps at Fort High Knoll. This was the old fort going back hundreds of years, right on top of this hill that you see on the postcard. And they put the gentlemen in there that weren't behaving very well. And this was people like Cyril Eloff, President Kruger's grandson. He had led the attack at Mafeking much earlier and was captured. And he was one of the early ones to go to St. Helena. And on the right-hand side, that is correspondence, a cover from the Cape to General Cronje, posted in East London in 1900, September 1900. And it was brought to St. Helena on the Union Castle ship, the Raglan Castle, one of the group, and arrived on the 15th of October. So it took just on a month to get there. But for those who have a great interest in philately, interesting pieces. Unfortunately, I collect other things, but not the paperware. And this is a piece censored by Captain Marling, as we've seen before. And there's his signature on the right-hand side in the censor box. And here we see Chief Censor Alexander Rat seated on the left-hand side with a white beard and white hair in the chair, and he wasn't very highly thought of by the prisoners at all. Hence they called him Alexander the Rat. And one of the reasons was apparently that apart from being chief censor, he was very well known for supplying the prisoners with alcohol, which certainly wasn't allowed, one would imagine. And the gentleman on the right, the slim gentleman there, is Walton, and another one of the censors. And then we have the group of virtually all of them, which I believe is von Ahlefeldt sitting in the front left with the fairly hard black moustache, and Captain de Witthammer sitting third right on that same photograph in the armchairs. But each one of those is a censor. And here we had some of the censors' names that I was trying to put together before I came, but we've got Alexander, we mentioned, Bower Wharton, Brown, Moule, and Captain Marling and Baron von Ahlefeld. This is a piece of cover, front only, unfortunately, and it's probably one of the only pieces of philatelic work I've got regarding the prisoner of the Boer War. And I found this interesting because this was addressed to the Secretary of Masonic Lodge, St. Helena, Mr. Clayton, but it seemed not to want to be delivered to him because it was scrawled out at the bottom in the blue crayon. But it was actually censored by F.W. Alexander, FWA in the bottom right-hand corner. And this was the first piece of Boer War memorabilia that I actually collected. And this was inscribed St. Helena 1902, and it's actually one of the old dip pens. But that was the first piece of memorabilia made by a POW that I collected in this number of pieces that I have. And here we have General Mrs. Cronje and her grandson with the secretary of the with his secretary and the military and two houseboys at Kent Cottage. My first visit to the island was in 2006 to undertake research on the prisoners of the war and their activities while they were encamped on the island. And the local archives were my first port of call. There were two Freemasons lodges on St. Helena in 1900, the Old Rock Lodge 912 and St. Helena Lodge 488. Now you'll notice here that I've actually got three lots of detail along the bottom row in various colours, and that's just to help me highlight the important points in these next few messages out of the papers. And here we see the Worshipful Brother Lieutenant Box, who'd just been installed as Worshipful Master, and he's sitting there in the front row, as is A.L. Innes, a gentleman who we shall come across in a few minutes as a photographer, and he's sitting four seats away from the Worshipful Master. And this is the first article that I came across whilst in records in the St. Helena Guardian, reading the St. Helena Guardian and the Masonic Chronicle while I was down in the St. Helena archives. And this is talking about the 48th annual festival, the installation of the Worshipful Master and officers at Old Rock Lodge 912. And there were two lodges, as I said before, I believe, Old Rock Lodge 912 and St. Helena Lodge 488. And against a great and representative gathering of Freemasons, the Worshipful Master-elect was Worshipful Brother A.L. Innes, the photographer. And he was installed by the installing master. And I won't read all the names out, but a lot of the military were there, and a considerable number of, well, no, not a considerable number, a number of the prisoners of war as well. And the one that mentions in this particular piece is Captain de Witt Hammer, and he presented the lodge with a souvenir consisting of a very useful article of furniture well known to every Freemason. Now, the problem I have with that is that it hasn't been very well looked after over the years since it was made. And what I should have done when I walked into the museum and saw this in the lodge building at St. Helena, I should have taken it away with me and polished it, because it's as dusty as it comes, and it could have done with a bit of repair. The two hinges on the inside of it really do need replacing. And I would suggest to a friend of mine who does a lot of work in the museum down there that maybe we should get that organised in due course. I don't like to see beautiful pieces of memorabilia not being in good condition. The health of the Worshipful Master was proposed by Worshipful Brother Crate, and after the successful year in office, he was handing over the gavel to Worshipful Brother Innes, who, being an experienced past master, would render the lodge and Freemasonry great service in general, it was considered. And Lieutenant McCulloch, in the with wit and humour, which received roars of laughter. Then the toast was drunk and musical honours, and they were responded to by, or the talk was responded to by Captain de Witt Hammer, for those brethren who before very long would be leaving the island, they thought. And this was very true. Very soon after this, they left. There was a toast to the officers of the lodge, and that was proposed by Brother Craik and responded to by Brother Lieutenant McCulloch, who expressed the hope that the selection was a good one and that the newly invested officers would do their duty to credit the lodge. Lieutenant McCulloch then proposed the health of E.J. Clee, who, whilst an involuntary excursionist to the island, had rendered his service to Old Rock Lodge as inner guard and otherwise during Worshipful Brother Craik's whole term of office. I like this term, involuntary excursionist, quite fun, I thought. But Brother Clee then briefly replied, at the same time taking the opportunity of bidding the worshipful masters and brethren farewell, as he did not think he would be there long enough to attend the next meeting. So he was paying his own fare back to the mainland and leaving the country, leaving St. Helena. Various toasts were intermingled by an excellent enraged musical program, the London proceedings, and Major Horniblow, Jack Stom and Gerritsen, the two prisoners of war. One was on the piano and the other one was on the flute and the cornet. So he was playing both pieces, and they deserved and received a very applause and made an encore. So here we see the three officers. We have General Benvillion on the left. We have Colonel Ad O'Shiel, we have Captain DeWitt Hammer on the left, let me get it right. Colonel Ad O'Shiel in the middle, and General Benvillion on the right-hand side. This was a censor who had written to Old Rock Lodge, George Alexander Matthew de Beer, a British subject. He wanted to join the lodge, and that's his letter, nicely written on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, thanks to friend Will Vevers, I think this was, and that is a record of those attending the lodge, Old Rock Lodge, in June 1902. And this gentleman, George Alexander Matthew de Beer, was by that time a member of the lodge, so he had achieved his objective. And here, a photograph album at auction, and within the covers were images taken by A.L. Innes, and there were two of them, and both had his hand stamp on the reverse. And I decided that I was going to keep one. Obviously, I took the other one up to the curator of Grand Lodge Museum in London, Grand Lodge Museum and Library in Freemasonry in London, I should say, and asked if I could search the records. And since then, I've been a regular visitor, and would like to thank Susan Snell and her colleagues for all the effort and time they've given me searching out the prisoners of the Boer War and details. Here behind the white strip is the Worshipful Grand Master, who was Prince Edward of Wales initially, who very shortly afterwards became King Edward VII after Queen Victoria had died on the 22nd of January 1901. And here's a petition to the King dated 14th of February 1901. It's asking really for brotherly love. Can we please go back to our own country? They'd seen enough of St. Helena after being out there for 2 years, obviously, or perhaps only 1 year at that time when this was written. It's a pity I can't read it all to you, but I'm not going to try because it's very faint in certain areas of it, and I don't think I would do it justice. But it's signed by Fred Mygin, Ludorf, and one of the others, which I can't certainly read as well, but a very nice piece of correspondence that was sent to the lodge. And here's the rest of it, which is slightly darker and enables me to read that it was Fred Mygin's, D.S. Arnoldi, Jack Stom and Ludorf who had signed the page on the left, and 24 other Freemasons had signed the right-hand side with their lodges of the various parts of the world they came from, mostly South Africa at that time by the look of it, but certain Dutch ones as well. Interesting piece of history. And this is the lodge, which a couple or three of them were attending. And this large item, and I've got a number of pieces that, if you look at my screen here now, I would say they were a paper knife, because my paper knives are somewhat similar and the same size as that. But when I was in Grand Lodge and saw the piece physically, I was told it was considered by the staff that it wasn't a paper knife or a page turner because of the size, but a poniard, a dagger or a sword that's used in some of the meetings and ceremonies of Freemasons. And here we see the piece where it's been inscribed, beautifully inscribed with the ZAR, South African Republic, coat of arms on the left. And in the center, it says made by a prisoner of the Boer War, St. Helena, 1901. And on the other side, it's got the square and compasses. It's a lovely piece. And whilst on that first visit, I asked if I could search the record, and it revealed the following, which is Alexander Leonis's information, which again, unfortunately, is covered by this panel. But he was 24 years of age when he decided he was going to go to St. Helena. His membership ceased in England as a Freemason on 30th of December 1893, and the records are marked up, gone to St. Helena. Why he would have wanted to go, I'm not quite sure. Certainly it wasn't as a prisoner. Here we see on the left-hand side, A.L. Innes's photographic supply shop, and on the right-hand side, cover from E. Hennis and Co. in Berlin. I would suggest it's probably an invoice or details of what they wanted to sell to him as a philatelic machines provider, possibly, it says there, I think. But a nice piece. Probably one of the only pieces of cover philatelic material in that respect that I have. I was more for the hardware and the handicraft rather than the philately side of it. Is A.L. Innes in the master's chair, and right in the middle, which again is slightly behind a banner, is his beautiful camera. And how does Robin know it's his camera? Well, because on the right-hand corner, you will see a brass bar underneath the leather patch going across it, and it says A.L. Innes on it. So that's A.L. Innes's camera. And he produced, I believe, it's something like 27 or 30 different postcards. Now, I must have done a little bit of mixing up when I put these two images up, because the one on the left-hand side says a postcard of Napoleon's house, Longwood, to Germany. But the image on the right-hand side is certainly not Longwood House, Napoleon's house at Longwood, rather. It's actually a view of Jamestown from up on the hillside, quite high up in the valley. So apologies for detailing those incorrectly. And this is my contribution of philately. As I say, my interest is more on the side of the items they made in the camps. But this is a wonderful gentleman. This is Maurice Legault, a French artist, and he did some interesting sketches on postal covers. And here we see a cow at the bottom, probably turning its back on the British soldiers, I would think. And this is a Masonic Illustrated article dated October 1900, and that really just records what I read out to you earlier on. And this is Freemasons Hall in Jamestown, a beautifully kept white building, but certainly on a slope going up towards it, as is most things on St. Helena. It's all going uphill, basically. And the walk from where the ships came into harbour up to where the camps were, Deadwood Camp certainly, probably took them about 5 hours. And come off a ship that's taken 10 days, you wouldn't want to be in their position. My second visit to St. Helena was organised with the assistance of Susan and the boys at Grand Lodge. And I was allowed to go into the lodge at St. Helena. And it's much different from what they have in Grand Lodge in London, I'm sure, but it serves the purpose, and it is a Masonic lodge. whilst I was in the lodge on St. Helena, I was allowed to have a look through the records, and I came across the minute book for Lodge 488 for the 1900 period whilst the prison were there, and I was allowed to take it back to the property where I was lodging, photographed all the pages where visitors' names were recorded, and then when I got back to the UK, I analysed these and recorded the names of the POWs and the British military attendees. And it's difficult to show it on here, but basically you've got the prisoners' names down the left, the dates of the meetings on the top centre, and the crosses where they were attending. Similarly with the British military here, not quite so many of them, I think, but that really needs to be brought up in a slightly larger, darker image. And here we have, and the family of Alexander will have to excuse me. He was known, according to an article by Dr. Stephen Royal of the School of Geosciences at Queen's University in Belfast, known to Stephen as Alexander the Rat. And that's written in Alice Stopford Green's papers, apparently. And she was another one of these ladies who went out to help the prisoners while they were in South Africa. Opposite number to her was on St. Helena as well. But here we see Alexander second from the right on the front, but he was certainly not very well thought of by the prisoners. Perhaps why he was not well thought of? Well, is the correspondence regulations that they put in front of the prisoners. No prisoner of war may write more than 2 letters a month. Such prisoners who have fathers and brothers of various camps abroad will be permitted to correspond with them once a month. No letter contain more than 200 words, and so it goes on. Basically, all letters addressed to ZAR or OBS will be destroyed as these places no longer exist. Having had a war there, that's probably the main reason. The letters may be posted daily between 10 and 12, but must be handed personally to the staff interpreter who will attend the office during these hours for the purpose of receiving them. No POW is allowed in the staff interpreter's office for any reason whatsoever. Parcels and packages must be picked up in the presence of the staff interpreter. And with reference to the envelopes retained by the censor's office, the unused stamps will be sold to the POWs and the proceeds given to the Widows and Orphans Fund. Well, that's about the nicest thing there is on that, I think. And here we see again 2 more pieces of philately. First one on the left-hand side is a card from Captain Coot to his mother, written whilst he was in Longwood Camp in May 1902. And I think it actually says, yes, there was a problem with one of his relatives. Sorry to hear about Aunt Ellie. So his mother was writing back to him on St. Helena, telling him he'd lost his aunt, I believe it was. And the one on the second side on the right, another one of Maurice Legault, the Frenchman's pretty pictures. He's actually inscribed this one with a lady in dress of the period. And the address on the same side, of course. Nice piece. Thanks to Wolf Weavers, both of those, I believe. And here we go for a morning cover from South Africa in 1902, from the Orange River Colony, cancelled and censored locally. Recorded label, initials AWP for Lieutenant A.W. Phelps. Is from Germany, Frank with a 2.5 pence paying rate, and the stamp were cancelled by Proud Obliterator type K106 and a Mabbott type CDS type 2, type 3. And unfortunately, the whole of the Jennings family is blotted out here in my site, but I found that 6 of these are Freemasons, I think. 4 of them are Freemasons out of the 10 or 12 that are listed along the bottom. Nice picture of all the boys on the side of a hill in St. Helena. And what it says on the back of the card is a gift to my loving wife, A.M. Brown, to the kin of E.W. Brown, POW, St. Helena Island during 1901, with loving greetings from myself, uncle, 6 cousins and 2 friends. So a lot of people in the photograph. as there are on here. Now, this is an interesting piece because this is a lovely part of the island that they were standing on here, and it's where Napoleon was buried. And the French actually keep it today as if it was just being buried today. Basically, it's beautifully well kept, and they have a person there all the year round attending the grave and making sure nothing untoward happens to it. But this is listed by 22, or listed with, I should say, excuse me, 22 prisoners of Boer War. And the next image gives you a list of all their names, all their lodge details, their rank in the lodge, and their residence in the particular town in South Africa. And that again is signed off at the bottom by Jack Storm. So Jack did a good job in recording that. It gives me a bit of information to deal with. And here's E.J. Clee's analysis of clarification and mortality at the age of, to age, 1891 to 1900. Now, I think E.J. Clee must have worked in a position where he was working with a lot of detail, because the work that's gone into putting this together certainly took him some time to prepare that, I'm sure. But then they had a lot of time on their hands whilst there. And this is a visitor subscription page, or number of visitors to the lodge, and it tells you they're paying anything between 2 and 6 pence and 7 and 6 pence. I won't like to tell you what that is in dollars, but there were something like 18 or 20 of them there that had paid 7 and 6 pence to go into the lodge at a particular time of the year. And they were all, and that was in 11th and 12th of 1900. And they were all military people, I believe. And this is a cover that's censored at Broadbottom Camp. All these covers are censored at Broadbottom Camp, I think. One on the left is Second Lieutenant A.W. Phelps at Broadbottom, and one on the right is G.A. De Beer at Broadbottom. He arrived on the Bavarian on the 21st of January. And a couple of nice pieces again, I think, thanks to Will Vivas. Out of the 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 or so that are there, we have 2 standing at the back, which are Freemasons. One is Captain Capel, and the other one is Lieutenant Lambex. And those sitting in the front, we have Captain Marling, Captain Goldsmith, Lord Bathurst, Captain Hobbs, and Captain Harding. I think that one is all of Freemasons. So the military were well represented. And this is the Boer standing outside waiting to sign the oath of allegiance, which they had to sign before they were allowed to go home. And this is a letter dated the 20th of November 1902 from the acting governor, Colonel A.J. Price, to Joe Chamberlain, as he was, MP and Secretary of State then in those days. I think I can remember him in the early days of my life, so he lived for a good age probably. But this is a letter that's been written by Jack Stom saying, it's being written on his behalf by A.J. Price, the Lieutenant Colonel Price, the acting governor in charge of Deadwood Camp, basically. And it's to the Right Honourable Joe Chamberlain, Secretary of State. And what Jack is saying is, well, thank you very much, but I've had enough of being with you on the island. I'm going to pay my own way back on the Galactica. And so at 34 years of age, he went a few days earlier than some of the others that had to wait to be carried out of the island by other transport. And this is an image of the prisoners all marching down the high street in Jamestown. Unfortunately, in the middle, being blotted out again. And here we have Charles Smith, always considered the last irreconcilable, one who would not sign the oath of allegiance to the British Crown. Well, that is very doubtful in this case, because Charles married and stayed on the island as Baker and as a Freemason. I met his adopted daughter Shirley on both my visits and corresponded regularly. She sadly died last year in Jamestown. Charles' son, Stephen, lives in the southwest of England, and I visit him occasionally to add details to my book. But there we see him standing with the cannon, and I'm not sure when that cannon was used either. It must have been much earlier than the Boer War. And this is the last, yes, this is the last irreconcilable, Charles's subscription for attending Grand Lodge. Sorry, Grand Lodge certificate for him to attend. And here we see 12 years later, he was Worshipful Master, which I find very interesting. And here we see 2 rocking chairs made by a prisoner, although I can't tell you who it was that made them, but I can tell you they're very beautiful. They're only model size. They're not full size to sit in, unfortunately, although I do have 2 that you can sit in. One belonged to the late dear Kenneth, Ken Griffith, who was a big collector. And when he died, his son gladly sold me the chair. But these are model ones, and they were made for Charles Boer Smith, obviously. And here we just see again a couple more pieces of postal history in Broadbottom Camp. There's a Colombo transit date stamp and on arrival in Diatalawa. So that one was sent to Ceylon, where I visited a few times and wrote a book about them last year in Ceylon. And the other one is Broadbottom Camp, again, from Holsten in Germany. And that's got a CDS AP 1501, arrival date stamp of 17th of May 1901. And this is an image of the industrial exhibition, a section contributed by the Boer prisoners of war. And they had once a year in St. Helena, an industrial exhibition that the ladies would take their pastries and cakes and whatever. And like we used to have the old garden shows when I was a young lad in England. And amongst this, if I can bring the screen up. What have I done wrong? There we are. Here we see a whole range of work made by the prisoner of war for the industrial exhibition. And you've got guitars, you've got boxes, you've got egg cups, just about anything you can think of. Chairs, smaller chairs, not armchairs. And again, this piece is blocking it out there. But these are the tools that I was told they were used. When I went into the St. Helena Museum, I was told these were the tools that were used by the prisoners for carving this handicraft work. I doubt very much whether they would have come up with some wonderful pieces of this. And this is a wooden carrying case that is rather heavy. Fred Mygins, who was one of the Worshipful Masters and prisoner of war, of course. And what's inside the box? You never believe it. Singer sewing machine. Incredible. I wonder where he was able to obtain that from to make the box to put it into. And this is a box inscribed AF Shield for Colonel Adolf Shield, dated St. Helena 1900. And it contains his binoculars and a bit of storage space in the front. Nice piece. And this is an elaborate, very elaborate box that I can't see because of the label over it, that it actually says S.J. Eloff, Commandant Sarah Eloff, POW St. Helena 1901. So a box that's made for President Kruger's grandson. And this is a letter rack inscribed down the brass square, Old Rock Lodge. And this is a basket made for General B. Cron. Beautiful. It's circular, and it's almost the same size as the top of my laptop here. And it is well carved, and it's got a beautiful strapper going over the top to carry it. And I can just imagine dear old Pete Cronje walking around the apple, where the apple trees are, and picking the apples up and putting them into this. But I noticed one thing, and I didn't notice that until I was putting this slide together to make the presentation. Somebody has left an R out of his name. They've got him down as General P. Cognier instead of Cronier. Well, that was unfortunate. You don't find too many inscriptions that are incorrect, but that would be on that piece, of course. And this is a beautiful tray that's got these lovely roundels, both on the outside and also around the inside as well. Lodge 488, 1901, St. Helena Lodge 48, 1901. And here's two pieces. We've got a jewel, a rather large wooden made jewel. And on the right-hand side, the only ever piece of Freemasonry walking sticks that I've come across. I've got a considerable number of walking sticks because that's where I started getting interested in the POWs, but it's the only one I've got that has anything to do with Freemasonry. And there we only see part of it, because if you stretch it out to its full length, well, then it unfortunately diminishes so that you can't really see the good piece of the knob. And this is a beautiful little pony trap that was made by POW 3819 Matthias Hooper, age 47, from Johannesburg, captured at Springfield on the 19th of March 1900, while serving for the Klaus commander, and he went to St. Helena also. And this is a metal bracelet with a square and compasses made from a British penny. So you've got the brass bracelet, and over the top, British penny that's been added to with the square and compasses. And this is an English clock. Where C.C. Taylor got this from, I don't know, because he was in the King's Own 2nd Battalion, but he's had the front inscribed with the square and compasses. It's got St. Helena 1901 with his name on it, C.C. Taylor. And then on the other side of it, it's had, or the top side of it, it's had inscribed the King's Royal Battalion. This is the most wonderful writing table you will ever see. And this belonged to General Benvillion. And when you consider that this piece has been from St. Helena to South Africa to Canada to the UK, and the little bottle on the side here that would have been an inkwell is still in one piece, and it's still in its original form. And I think that is wonderful. It's, what is it now, 1899, 200 years old almost now, isn't it? And it's a wonderful piece. And oops, I'll take it back, I've pressed it too hard, but it's actually got an inscription with his name on it. And this piece is very similar, but this is made a ship's table again, made for Captain de Fremont, the French captain. And it wasn't until I was doing a preparation here again the other night that there's like an inscription going around here, dot punched inscription. And when I looked at it again, it appears to be the outline and the shape of St. Helena Island. It goes all the way around amongst the square and compasses. Quite an interesting piece. And this piece is even more interesting because this has got the name of all the senior officers: Captain de Witt Hammer, General Benvillion, Adolf Shield, and one more. And in the center is actually made by the prisoners and presented by the senior officers to Lieutenant Colonel Paget, the gentleman in charge of them all on the island. Wonderful pieces. So Old Rock Lodge was in 1912 under very unusual circumstances, and I'm afraid you're going to have to wait until I finish my book and get it published, because I believe I've found a location of these reasons and why it was closed under unusual circumstances. But I just need to confirm the details. So hopefully in due course, we shall know what happened to Old Rock Lodge. And this is a beautiful dip pen and inkstand, again made by a prisoner, B.J. Frey. And the lid folds down, and you have this piece on the right then with the inkwell, the stand for the pen, and the panel for you to lay the paper on and write. There's a model Mauser made by Z.A. Heffer, again from Weppener, and while he was on St. Helena, and he was a Freemason again, as you'll see by the square and compasses on the side of this. I had to put it upside down because if you turn it up the right way, his name's upside down, which I can't work out why he did that. This is the most beautiful trowel. This is the most beautiful wooden trowel, and that's virtually life size. So it is a wonderful piece of, but that was made in Ceylon by a prisoner in Ceylon, and unfortunately he didn't put his name on it. This is a piece that's sitting in front of me here in live, which is a beautifully made collection bowl. It's only a matter of about a hand's width across, but it's inscribed St. George 200. That's the number 200, and the date of 1901. That's most likely a Bermuda piece. And this is a coffin, and it's obviously an image to identify with emblems of mortality. And this was made by F. Brink in 1901, and it's actually got his name in pen and ink on the bottom image there, so we know who made it. And this is a silver Canadian coin that's been on the end of a watch chain or a lady's bracelet or necklace. And again, it's got the square and compasses engraved over the top of what was the king's head, I should think, or the other side of it. And this is a very nice sewing basket made by flax, not Masonic, but certainly beautiful workmanship. That's why I wanted to show you these last two pieces. And these also, but it's not ivory, this is beef bone, boiled beef bone made into napkin rings and candlestick holders, and even a notepad on the right-hand side. And the last piece, I think this one is, and this is a beautiful chessboard that I bought at auction, sold it to a friend in South Africa. Whenever I went to see him, he wasn't using it, so I bought it back off him. And it's now sitting in my home. And it's all images of Saint Helena, beautiful. And this is from the air as you see it now when you fly into the island, which I haven't yet done, but I would suggest it's probably the best way to go now, and it's a wonderful experience to go down there. It's just I don't do this very often because I have a big bill to work out when I get back home, and I'm lucky to be alive, to be honest. I did this last week. So thank you all very, very much for listening to me. I'm glad I was here to present this to you, and I will try and not turn my cards over too regularly. Thank you all very much. I hope you enjoyed it, and my book is progressing very slowly. Thank you all indeed. Are you there, Joan? Joan's gone.
I am here. Thank you. That was really, really interesting, Robin.
What time did I?
And what we're going to do is we are going to bring people over, and they could ask their questions, and we'll just do that. So right now we did have a couple questions. So first of all, let's how was your cover damaged? That's the first question.
You have to go to the previous.
The one that the cover that you own, Robin.
Sorry, Joe.
The cover that you owned, how was that damaged?
The car?
No, the cover, the one piece of philately that you owned.
Oh, how is it damaged? Well,
Yeah, how was it damaged?
How was it damaged? I don't know. I got hold of it like that, but it's the only piece that I can actually say that's from a Freemason. But it's just the front. Somebody's obviously taken it out and cut the back piece off of it, the back half of it off it, which is sad, really, because it would have made a nice piece. Oh, we have some new visitors. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Ladies, if there are ladies, I'm blocked out by this white panel again over.
But now's a good time to try to figure out how to get rid of that, but because you're the only one who saw that.
Sorry?
You're the only one who saw that white message. So someone said, try hitting.
Oh, now I can move it, Joe. Now I can move it, Joe, which is what we should have done at the beginning. If it was over there, I could have read all my words for exactly as I've got them on the slides. If it's where it is in the middle, you can't get half the text up. That's the problem. But anyway, I think we achieved our objective. It was very kind of you to invite me.
I know. I can't believe those prisoners of war carved that handicraft. It's like so amazing.
Well, what you have to
That
remember,
detail.
Joan, is you're talking about, what, 1899, 1902. Well, they probably 100 years before that, they had to make their own furniture. They'd all gone from Holland and various other places to South Africa to set up in the farming industry. And they went with very little. They had to make their own furniture and whatever. And this is, I believe, where a lot of this carving emanates from. But the workmanship is fantastic. I wish I could show you this piece I've got in my hand here. You can't see it. Ah, yes, you can. Through that little eye. I didn't look into that eye very often, Joan. I apologize. But can you see this?
Oh, yes.
This is a little box. Where are we going? Let's just see. It's a little circular box. We'll put it all together like that. I can't see where I'm going. Little circular box, two brass pennies either side as the handles and a brass knob, and it's inscribed St. George number 200. Well, that isn't the lodge in St. Helena, and that can only be in Ceylon, in India or Bermuda. And I've been to Bermuda twice and done some good research there, and I don't recognize St. George Lodge, but I will find out. That worry me now because I don't know it. But that's just an example of one piece of memorabilia. And when you think that, you know, how they've worked it and whatever, it's beautiful.
Robin, this is Dan Walker, one of the participants. Did anyone ever try did any of the prisoners ever try to escape from St. Helena?
No, I think St. Helena was just about the worst place in the world you could be, because it takes you 7 days to get there by ship. In today's ship world, they certainly tried in Ceylon, and I think the story goes, I should know this because I've written about it. I think there were 4 of them that eventually, through some help of Russians, got back over the top and got away from Ceylon that way. India as well, I think there were a couple, but none at all, as far as I know, from St. Helena.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
It's a nice little island to visit, but I loved going out. I went twice by the Royal Mail delivery boat, and it's virtually 7 to 10 days to get out there, and you get good food on the ship, and they take good care of you. You go and play cricket on the deck and whatever. And it's interesting. And you know, people are very friendly on board. You meet new friends, and I met a dear old military gentleman and his daughter that were on board, and I still correspond with them, although she's living now in California somewhere. So, yeah, interesting.
Robin,
So there are 2 Freemasons questions. One was, are Freemasons able to go to any lodge that they want throughout the world?
They would normally, I believe, contact anyone in charge of the lodge to go. Yeah, they probably might ring or speak to somebody. Sorry, that's what I was looking for. I thought I'd lost my jewellery for a minute. I'd taken it off because it bangs on the PC. But they would normally, I would think, go through Grand Lodge and get an invitation that way, probably.
yes.
Okay.
I'm hopeful Susan's on here. So. Excuse me, sorry.
I say you have to go through Grand Lodge and get permission to approach a lodge overseas to go to.
I thought you would.
Their Grand Lodge.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Robin?
Yes.
Jeremy Gaston, I'm in England. It seemed unusual that there were 2 Masonic lodges in such a small place. Were they both English Constitution lodges, or was one Irish Constitution? Or
no, they were both. They were both British Constitution, as far as I know.
Ah, right. Okay.
I was hopeful Susan was going to be on here today. We haven't got Susan up here on the. Ah, yes, there she is. She's got her hand up. Does that mean she's asking a question, Jean? Where are you, Susan?
Susan, you could just unmute if you'd like.
Susan's up on the top left-hand corner.
Yes, I'm definitely here. Can you hear me?
Yes,
No,
we
Susan.
can.
Brilliant.
Where are you,
Yeah.
Susan?
I'm
Wave
here.
to me.
Don't worry, Robin. I'm here.
Where are you, Susan? I can't see you. There's
I
got a
am
big, big.
here. Don't worry. I probably haven't got my video switched on. Let me-
Right. Okay. Good afternoon, Susan. Now, this,
There we
ladies and
go.
gentlemen, this, ladies and gentlemen, there we are. There's Susan in the top left-hand corner for me. This is the young lady who has been so helpful with allowing me to go through the records for the past 200 years, I think I've been through. And yeah, they're very, very helpful at Grand Lodge. Susan works there full time when she's not damaging herself in the gym. But I'm glad to see you there, Susan. I'm pleased about that. I think,
Well, we're all very pleased to see you, Robin. Yeah,
Sorry, Susan.
we're all very pleased to see you.
Well, I tried to get here on time. I hope I didn't. I was lost a bit. I was lost a little bit because I don't know whether Joan could do anything about this for another presentation in future, but it's across the middle. This meeting is being recorded in a box that covers the whole centre part of the
Okay.
screen. And so
Don't worry.
all
We'll
the
have a
words I
chat
wanted-
about that to sort it out.
all the words I wanted to read out, I couldn't read.
Not to worry.
We have a Mr. Prato, Fernando Prato over there wants to say something maybe. His name's just come up. Anyone?
Where is the Grand Lodge? Is it in London?
The Grand Lodge?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I doubt if I can get back to it quickly now. Unfortunately, when I came to bring the slide up of the Grand Lodge building, it was covered out by this
Well,
meeting
no, I
as
saw,
being.
I saw the building, but where is it? Is it in London or is it?
Oh,
in
yeah,
someplace
sure.
else?
Yeah, right in the middle of, well, Susan, you know the address better than I will, but it's in.
It's right in the middle of Covent Garden,
Oh, okay.
which is near Holborn Tube
Yes.
Station.
Mhm.
And we do have a museum, the Museum of Freemasonry, that anybody is welcome after we reopen, which we're hoping to do in May,
Okay.
to come round and have a look. There's
Well, I'm
no
coming over for
charge.
if COVID goes and they reschedule the World Philatelic Show, I'll be over for that and I'll add this to my list. My wife and I will come and visit.
Well
Brilliant.
worth the visit. Well worth
Yeah.
the visit. Whether you're a
Is that right?
Freemason or not, it's well worth the
Yes.
visit.
Yeah. I lived in England for 7 years when I was in the military in East Anglia.
All right. Yes, you were probably at Bentwaters or
No, I was at Lakenheath
Lakenheath. Yeah.
Yeah. for 7 years. So, and lived in Thetford. So I went to London a lot, but I didn't know I was into stamp collecting, but British Commonwealth. And now I'm joining this group and it's very interesting. I live in the States now.
So you're a philatelist.
Yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah,
So
I'm not sure what they call me. A collector, I think.
I would just like to add that the lodge in London was built as a memorial to those that perished in World War I, those Masons who perished in World War I. It is an Art Deco gem. It is one of the most spectacular buildings I've ever been into.
cool.
And if you go to London, I would not miss going. I'll go
We'll
again.
definitely check it out.
Go.
Yes, thank you.
Definitely check it out.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, I've got an image on here that I was intending to show because this was to bring me into Susan and
Up
the
there's-
colleagues there that have been so helpful.
Yeah.
But it is the most spectacular. I took a photograph only last year from the opposite side of the road, and it is incredible when you just stand and look at it. The design of it, beautiful.
There's a very good video on its webpage, which sort of gives you like the 5-minute tour, but
Cool.
figure an hour.
Excellent.
I had a
But
question
in
about
full
Bermuda.
disclosure, Robin is a member of a philatelic group.
Oh yeah, I'm in the
And I think
Anglo-Boer Philatelic Society in England, although I've got a few philatelic covers, but not a great deal of them. But the half piece that I showed you earlier on was one of them. But I like going to the meetings, and
Nice.
there's always something interesting going on. I'm surprised we haven't got any of our other members. I thought Wilf might have been here today, but he contributed to some of the letters that I've got on
Nice.
my show.
Yes, I am here.
So
Robin.
Robin,
Are you there,
Oh,
Wilf?
Yes, I'm here.
I bet you're underneath this white panel, Wilf. Now I've heard you. Where are you now?
He's second from first row, second down.
So
Mr.
on the
Susan.
censors,
Sorry.
do you, sorry, Robin, do you know if the censors were selected or appointed? Were they employees of the post office? Do you know anything about
If
how they became censors? That's asked by Richard.
No, I don't know how they became censors, to be perfectly honest, Joan. You know, I wrote this booklet about von Ahlefeldt, but can't find that at the moment. I'm surrounded by paperwork.
Robin,
how
would you
he
like me to
became-
come in on that one?
Certainly. Let's hear it.
Right. You will find that a number of the censors were appointed in the Cape, and they came up as the translators on the vessels. Alexander came up on the Milwaukee with the first prisoners, and other censors subsequently came up on other vessels. The 2 or 3 of the censors were actually military people who were appointed because a number of the censors from South Africa were not that fluent in Old German in particular, which some of the forces personnel were. And so you get a number of forces personnel, particularly from the 4th Gloucesters, who acted for various periods as temporary censors.
That's you, Wilf, is it? And I can't see you. You're blocked out. I've got your name up here, but I haven't got you on the screen.
That's correct, Robin.
Right. I was going to say, Wilf, Captain Marling, of course, is the one I know from the Gloucesters, and he was a censor down there, wasn't he?
That's right. I mean, Phelps, who was also a Freemason, he was with the 2nd Gloucesters.
Yeah, my apologies for not adding that into my talk, because you'd mentioned it to me only yesterday.
What was Bermuda like in 1899 to 1902? The only time I've heard Bermuda was where hedge fund managers gather to play golf and confer. So I can't imagine it being a place to exile anybody.
Sorry, what, St. Helena not to exile anyone to? I think the.
No, I mean, but Bermuda, you know, it's like Bermuda. There's a place to play. They used to do an annual conference for hedge fund managers where they would have play golf there, and I'm like, why would you exile someone to Bermuda?
Well, because it was an island and it was off the shore of America. It wasn't anywhere that anybody was going to get away from easily. So they said, at least. But then there were 4 in, I think it was in Ceylon, and somebody will correct me, I'm sure. There were 4 in Ceylon, or maybe it was in India, one or the other, that got away by a Russian ship and got back to South Africa. So, you know, there were 1 or 2 that got away. But not many. I don't think there was anybody that completely got away from St. Helena. And they tried, but they were usually so far, you know, it takes 10 days on a ship today to get there. So what it would be like in 1900, it probably took 3 weeks.
Yeah. Hi, this is Jed Zates in the upper left there, at least in my computer, I'm in the upper left. And I'm actually on this lecture because of Bermuda, because I saw the Boer War, what they carved in Bermuda, and the difference seems to be that they made a lot of stuff for tourists. So in answer to the previous gentleman's question, there must have been tourism in Bermuda around 1900. And I'm sure, Robin, you're aware of it, but there's spectacular stuff in Bermuda carved by the Boer War prisoners. But a lot of it are to be sold to tourists, and they made money, I think.
A lot of it was shipped to the United States.
Oh, really?
I think so, yes. A lot of it went to the States, out of Bermuda. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
So they got paid for their work? The prisoners got paid for their work?
No, they would get the money they sold it for, though.
Okay.
Yeah, and Captain de Witt Hammer particularly was organising all that through his Freemason brothers in Holland. They were taking ammunition boxes, which are as big as the top of my desk here, and filling them up with these artifacts and sending them off to Holland to his Freemason brothers, and he would then get them sold off, and the money went back to the Women and Children's Fund, and no doubt some of it found its way back to the prisoners as well. But it's fascinating when it's when you see the pieces of workmanship, incredible.
Yeah.
Robin,
That,
the island appears to be very, very remote. So I'm wondering, where did all this beautiful wood come from?
excuse me, sorry, I didn't get.
Where'd the wood come from?
Where did the
Wood come from?
Where did the wood come from? Well, Longwood was well named at one time, but I think when the prison had been down there for a while, there was no more wood there. Because you go down there today and Longwood is the title of the place, but the trees were all cut down and used, I guess. Yeah, amazing. So it's a fascinating period of history, I find. I did a book last year, Prisoner of the Boer War in Ceylon and the Dutch East Indies, and there were 4 of them got away on a Russian ship from Ceylon. Yeah, that's another part of the world, but there's something fascinates me more than anything about St. Helena. I'm not sure what it is, maybe because I've been twice. But yeah, I have a big interest in the bits and pieces that they made. Wonderful collection, really.
Robin, there was one prisoner, in fact, who did get away from St. Helena. He was a chap called Ricciardi, who was he was Italian, but a member of the Scandinavian Commando. And he met up with some Spanish sailors down at Napoleon's tomb and arranged to swim out to their training ship, which was the Nautilus, which was anchored out in the bay. And because it was a Spanish naval training ship, it wasn't a vessel which the British forces would probably have gone on to check. And as a result, he escaped from St. Helena and ultimately went to the United States. But as far as I'm aware, he was the only one that ever got away completely.
Well, I'd like to come and talk to you about that at some time, Wilf, because I haven't certainly got that in anything that I've written. I'd like to record that. We
have a question from someone in the bottom corner.
In the bottom corner?
Go on.
Is that me, Ronnie Winchester from Australia?
Nice part of the world. I haven't been for a couple of years. I've got good friends down in Portland.
There are no Boer prisoners held here.
No, I was there 2 years. I was there 2 years ago when you had these awful fires. Oh my word!
Yeah,
dreadful.
I have a question. Many years ago, I had an advanced collection of Orange River Colony, and now long gone. And during the collecting period, some 50 years ago, I bought an item at a Robson Low sale, which came from Sri Lanka, from Ceylon, which consists of an inkwell with the coat of arms of the Transvaal carved on the lid, miniature pen, miniature pencil, miniature notebook, all contained in a cigarette tin with Queen Victoria's head on it. I want to get rid of it. Where do I get rid of it?
You did get rid of it?
No, not yet. No, I'm saying where will
I was going to say, I can tell you where you could get rid of it. I'd probably buy it off you.
Oh, well, I think I looked, there's not a selling section, but I can get in touch with you. I've got an email or something like that, and you can take it from there.
I'm always interested.
Just send us, if you send us an email, we'll forward it on to Robin if you don't have his email directly.
Right, it's Ronnie, by the way. I'll do that. I'll send it on to you, and you can deal with it from there.
Yes, I'd be interested to see what you got there. That's
okay.
I collect more of the. Sorry,
Robin. What was the red car you flipped?
I tell you what, I'm glad it was made in Germany, was it? Or was it France? No, it was Japan. It was a Honda Civic, souped up one actually. They're quite a sporty little job, and I cannot tell you how I managed to drive it off the road, because I drive down that road almost every day of the week from Waddesdon down to Quainton where I live, and to try and down the back road. And I must have been doing two things at once that afternoon, and put my foot on the accelerator without knowing it, and I went up over the curb and up over the hedge. And if there had been a tree, I wouldn't have been here today, that's for sure.
Sounds a bit like Tiger Woods.
Tiger Woods. I think
It's called a senior moment.
that could very well be true as well at the moment.
Myself.
It is a lovely little car to drive, though. But I must admit, when you put your foot down in it, it does go quite quick. I wouldn't recommend going off the road in it. That's for sure. But,
there are two questions in the question and answer part.
Yeah, sure.
Hammers International would like to answer.
Go ahead.
In the question and answer section?
Yes.
Okay,
Lodges,
hold on.
both York.
How was the cover damaged? It says Harmers International would like to answer this question
Oh,
live.
no. Oh, I'm sorry. Robin said he didn't know how it was damaged. My apologies for that.
What, my cover?
Okay, but it says Harmers International would like to answer this question live.
Okay,
So it
I
seems that
apologize.
somebody
I
has
am
an answer.
Harmers. No, I am Harmers International, and I
Oh,
assure
okay.
you, I wasn't alive when the cover was damaged, so I can't tell you what happened.
Okay.
And
Did not know you were Harmers International.
Sorry.
That's all right.
This is Harbour with a name like that, Joan, isn't it? Yeah. So I hope I didn't bore anybody too much today.
Excellent.
Oh, absolutely not.
How many of
Did I
the
go over
exiles?
the limit of time? I was a bit worried about the timing, but I kept getting this note in the middle to tell me that.
Yeah.
Well, it blocks it out a little bit. That was the only thing I found a bit unfortunate, because it was blocking the text out.
You mentioned one exile who stayed on St. Helens. How many other exiles ended up not going home because they found, decided not to go home?
The ones that didn't go home from St. Helena, or from where? Sorry.
Elsewhere, St. Helena. Maybe somebody like life in life in Ceylon, or just decided to grow tea or something like that.
In St. Helena, there was really only dear old Boer Smith, and his relatives still live on St. Helena.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There were 4 got away on a Russian ship out of Ceylon, but I'm not sure what happened to them. Although I wrote about some last year. I'm trying to think of, well, that was again a woman in Australia is a relative of one of the ones that got away from Bermuda.
But like I was just thinking, there's opportunity. Exile can also be an opportunity. It's like you're in Ceylon and there's a lot. There's things going on there. Maybe you meet somebody in Ceylon, and well, now you're on a tea plantation in Ceylon and decide not to go back to South Africa.
Sorry, what was that? You owned a tea plantation in Ceylon, but no.
Yeah, it's like you met somebody and now you're on a tea plantation in Ceylon and you're not going back to South Africa because you like it there.
Well, yeah, it probably did. Yes, certainly.
Stuart, if you recall the mortality table that was presented, most of the people who stayed in St. Helena are buried there. These were family men. Many of them were older men. They only wanted to go home. And when you isolate people like that, okay, they bond together. They bonded with their Masonic brothers, but in their hearts, I'm certain they only wanted to go home. And,
so they were like they had families back home, because sometimes prisoners of war are single men, and like when they're prisoners of war, World War II, but some of them stayed back home.
Not the case in this war. This was a war that was fought by a relatively small number of Boer farmers. These were people rooted to the land against what was then the mightiest army in the world.
Yes,
And
I would agree with that.
they put up a good fight, but it was not going to be successful. It was, by the
Well, I
way,
think-
very unpopular in Britain as well. This war, very similar to the America's experience in Vietnam. It was a guerrilla war fought by the most powerful army at the time, in both cases, and unpopular at home in both cases.
Right.
It was a war where you had a lot of casualties from disease, and it took the British several years. Actually, there was 2 Boer wars, right? There was a very short one, and then the second Boer War, which is the one most people talk about.
Yeah, the worst thing about the Boer War was the women and children. You should go to Bloemfontein, where the museum is, and see the memorial wall that they've built. And I was down there last year. I go almost every year, but I haven't been this year because of the virus. But since I was there last year, they built this memorial wall, which probably stretches almost 50 yards. And it's 6 feet, 8 feet high and 50 yards long almost. And it's got the names of the women and children that died in the concentration camps. Concentration, not like the German concentration camps, but it was a concentration of people. And you had women and children with very little medical care, very little food, and thousands, but on thousands of them died. And I don't love to tell the story. I like people to be aware of it. And I make sure whenever I get a chance, I talk about it.
Oh, I agree with you.
There were 3 women. There was Emily Hobhouse, English girl who went down there to look after them. And there were 2 others whose names don't come to me at the moment. But if it hadn't been for them, I think there would have been thousands more that died. But I'm surprised they even allow us go into South Africa. Yes.
I went to school in Bloemfontein. So I really know all about. Yes, I went to school there. I did finish my high school there.
Sorry, I'm looking for you. I'm looking for you in the wrong corner. Sorry. Yeah, I like Bloemfontein, and I've got good friends down there. I go and stay with Arnold van Dyke, who's a big philatelic collector. I'm sure Joan knows of Arnold, or should do, if not. Dear old Bernard Duplessis, who's from Stilby, he died last year, and Arnold had all of his collection, I think. And that was a collection to beat all collections. But yeah, it's a side of the story, the war story, that nobody ever taught us in school. You know, and I was born halfway through the middle of World War II. But what went on in the Boer War and previous to World War I and World War II doesn't bear thinking about. It's incredible how we treated people, and, you know, whatever.
It was a disgrace. It was a disgrace. It was the worst of war crimes.
Sorry?
These concentration camps for the women and children were the worst of humanity, and there were war crimes of the worst sort.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
The only saving issue, if you will, is that in the First World War, the British also had civilian concentration camps in India and civilian internment camps there. And they were much better cared for and treated with a lot more dignity. So the casualty rates and the morbidity, mortality rates were exceptionally low. So I think the British learned from a horrific experience, and but you know, that's war. It's sometimes very, very brutal.
There's no good things in war, in my opinion. It's, yeah, you don't get very much come out of it that's worth knowing, I think. So it's been an interesting period of time. I haven't given a long presentation like this for a while. I hope we haven't bored too many people.
No, I think it's an amazing presentation, Robin, and you had beautiful things to show us and interesting philatelic things to show us. And I hope everybody had as good a time as I did. And I look forward to seeing everyone at the April presentation on a subject of South Africa as well. Joan, do you have the title in your head? I forget the exact title.
Victorian Natal, and that's with Keith Klugman. And that is also with all the several South African study groups are going in on this because it's Keith Klugman has a very amazing philatelic collection. Sorry, Robin. It's all those little paper things that you chided me about.
I have an interest in a certain aspect of the philatelic things, but I've never collected them. My interest has been in the items they made in the camps, basically.
I just like the exchange between your knowledge.
Did anybody see this one, or can you see it now?
Yeah. Well, we saw it on the screen. The
You
saw the bowl. I didn't think I'd showed you this, but it's a square and compass with old Kruger's. Why they put a Kruger coin in it, I'm not sure, because that's might have been made for a South African lodge. But that's a nice, interesting piece. You know, the metal work that's done on it is amazing, really, and all of this is it's like chipped out in diagonal form. Incredible. The time they must have spent, and they had a lot of it, I guess. Beautiful pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like the way that it came alive when you know the censor's name that we collect as philatelists, and you actually knew the story of them and the story of the lodge. I think that really puts it puts philately in a different context when you actually see the person who wrote the letter and hear a little bit about their history. I think that was, for me, that was fabulous.
Well, there's a lot of people in the Anglo-Boer War Philatelic Society that know a lot more about philately than I do, but I haven't got a great deal of it, but I've got one or two small pieces, but not a lot of philately. I like the woodwork and handicraft. And I guess that may be because I was an apprentice bookbinder originally and achieved an ambition last year or the year before what I wanted to do since I was 16, and that was go to Antarctica. Because when I was 16, we were producing The Crossing of Antarctica by Fuchs and Hillary in the factory I worked in as an apprentice bookbinder. And I took a copy out the factory, took it up to the London College of Printing and took it all apart, sewed it back together again and bound it in blue leather with a white inlay of Antarctica on the front. And I'd always wanted to go, and I achieved it after 70 odd years, or 68 years, I think it was, to be perfectly correct. But I made it, and then I went to Antarctica, and then went to the Arctic the following year. So I've got I'm parts. But no, I was very fortunate. I was sales director for a couple of companies and international sales director selling to the airline. So for me, whenever there was an airline, there was an opportunity, and I went to see most of them. And thankfully, I've been to 135 different countries.
So you've been to the North Pole and the South Pole?
Yes, I went to the Arctic last year and Antarctica 2 years before that. Interesting, yeah.
What does walrus taste like?
I never tried it. I like to see them alive. I think the penguins were beautiful. I fell in love with penguins. They go along like this, and they're trying to get up the rock, and they slip back, and then they go again, and eventually they make it. You know. Yeah.
Well, are there any more questions for Robin?
Well, I think
because it's pretty late there. It's after midnight.
Warn everybody out. Well, you told me I got to stay awake till 3 in the morning, didn't you? Oh, it's only 2. No, it's not. It's only 1. You haven't got to 1 o'clock yet, Jean.
I kept telling you to take a nap this afternoon, so
if
you
I'd
could
have
stay
got to
up.
sleep, if I'd have got to sleep at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I probably wouldn't have been here tonight.
Well, may I say to the study group, thank you very much from Australia for organizing the meeting at such a civilized time. It's now 11:30 in the morning, and it's time for tea and cake.
Ah, good idea.
Which part of Australia? Sorry, which part of Australia are you from?
Just outside Melbourne. We're on holiday down on the lakes for a few days.
lovely part of the world. I always fly into Melbourne and then I drive down to Portland, Victoria.
That's right. That's beautiful. It is a beautiful part of the world indeed.
I got very good friends down there. This is a young lady I met on my first ever business trip around the swimming pool in Bahrain.
That's too much information.
No, there's nothing like that at all in it. There were two girls, one of whom was English, and Christina, the Australian girl, and I sat around the swimming pool and had a drink with them. And in the bar, we walked into the bar afterwards, and there were two guys starting to scrap in the bar. And to get to the bar, you had to go down this long corridor through the kitchen area, and there were plates and cups and saucers piled up on these aluminium cabinet sort of thing. And we were out in the bar having a quiet drink, and these guys started to scrap, and they went along the kitchen bar and knocked everything flying. There were cups and saucers all over the place. And I kept in touch with Christina and used to correspond, and she'd have dinner with me when she came over to England. And eventually I got down to Australia after she was married and got the first child, I think. Claire, blimey. Claire wouldn't want me to tell you that because she's now had her first or second one in the last 2 years. That's a long time ago, isn't it?
Great background.
Sorry?
John Marsh has a lovely background.
I like Australia very
Thank you.
much.
That's in Maine,
Oh,
in the United
Oh.
States. And right now it is 7:45 in the evening.
Okay.
and is that you, John, with that image? Yes, with the beautiful fir trees.
Yes, that's up in Acadia National Park in Maine.
Oh, right. That's in Maine. I don't think I've been to Maine, but I've seen quite a lot of the world. It's been pretty interesting. Can't say I've ever been bored.
I heard I listened to, it was a presentation, like a one-act play, a woman who she worked in Antarctica over the winter. The pay is very high. They give you a lot of ice cream. They give you a color code to test your urine against to make sure you're getting enough water, because dehydration is a real risk. And they have to do a real strong psychological test before you do, because it's easy to go insane 6 months in the winter.
I don't recall having too much ice cream when I was in Antarctica.
I think it was like for the people staying there for 6 months. They try and keep you as happy as possible, but it's very lonely.
I can recommend the trip though. I went with an Australian company on board their ship. I'm trying to think of the name of it at the moment. My old brain doesn't work all the time these days. But yeah, it was nice. It wasn't a large ship. It was, a smaller vessel, but it was 40 or 50 people on board. It was fun. We all got on extremely well together and ate and drank well and walked around in the cold, and we were well dressed for it. They gave you a nice underclothes and over jacket, and yeah, enjoyable.
I think for the workers, they fly you in, and then the next flight is 6 months away. It's 6 months from then. So it's like you're kind of stuck there. It's like an oil rig.
Now, speaking of oil rigs, I think we should let Robin get some sleep. And Susan,
I'm wide
it's
awake.
pretty late.
That's the trouble. I think Susan must be pretty well tired as well.
I've got to say good night to everybody. I've got to go take care of some things. It was wonderful seeing everyone. See you guys. Hope to see everybody in April for the next talk.
Robin, thank you for a marvelous presentation.
Thank you, Robin.
Much appreciated, and I'd give it again anytime for anybody, anywhere. I thoroughly enjoy doing it.
And thank you to the chair lady. Thank you to the chair lady who conducted the meeting so well.
Yes, Joe.
Robert Gray, my co-chairman, deserves equal credit.
Joan does most of the work, most of it, like 99%. So I give my applause to Joan and my applause to Robin, because I think
thank you very much for all of you. Thank you very much for coming. I'll tell you what, this is something that I've never used before, Zoom. I think it's amazing. You know, I could have done, well, no, if I'd have had this 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't have seen half the world that I have seen. So, but again, it's nice to be able to nick with people very easy. You know, it's wonderful.
Yes, it is a great tool, especially
so
in the year of COVID. Yes.
thank you, everybody, for coming.
Okay,
Thank
so-
you, Robin, from Norway.
All right. Good night.
All the very
Good night.
best.
Bye-bye.
Good night, Robin.
Bye. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Susan, I'll be in touch.
Yeah, thank you, Robin.
Thank you very
Did you
much.
have an enjoyable time? Did you seem like you enjoyed yourself, except for that little button we couldn't get to move, but.
Sorry, was that directed to who?
Yeah, I asked you if you had a nice time. I think you look like you were having a nice time.
Me? Yeah, I had a wonderful time.
Good.
I like giving presentations. It's just part of me that I enjoy doing it. I like putting them together and giving them. I used to go down to South Africa once a year to see if I could find any memorabilia down there, and I would always give a presentation to a group of about 20 people. There'd always be 20 or 30 turn up, and it was always enjoyable to give it.
Well, we had like over 150, right, Joan? I think the number was like
Yeah,
170.
it went up to 170 initially, and then
150 on today.
Yeah, 170 was the high number
Wow.
total. So it's pretty good from people from all over the world. That's what's so amazing.
And did they stick with it?
Most did, yeah.
Really?
But,
I didn't bore too many people then. I'm pleased about that.
Well, they can see it on the website and on the YouTube. And Joan, I guess you can send Robin a link to that afterwards so you can share it with some friends as well. Terrific.
Definitely. And Robin, you'll see what we were talking about. What you were seeing on your screen was not what we were seeing. So we didn't see that box. Everything came through quite clear.
Oh, right, okay. I had that box coming across the middle there, and it kept wiping out my text matter, and I lost half the story then. But, I don't know why that was then, because we don't have it now. So it must be something to do with when you're giving a presentation.
No, there's a way of removing it.
Yeah.
Again?
There's a way of removing it. You have to use your mouse or your keypad and then click continue, and then it goes away.
Where do you find continue on here?
Well, when that bar came up and it said it's recording, on the lower right portion of it, it says continue, and then you just use your pad or your mouse, whatever you're using, and you click, and that gets rid of it.
I didn't see that. There we are. We learn.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll do another one in due course.
Yeah. Zoom is a great tool and lots of things to learn with it, but it's great. Anyway, once again, I'll say good night to everybody and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Good night,
All the very
Robert.
best.
Bye, everybody.
Night.
That,
Good
Joan.
night, Robin.
I'll see you, Joan. Sometime you're still there, Joan.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm the hostess. I always wait till everyone leaves. I don't like kicking people off unless
Okay,
they're,
well, I'll get
But
dressed
you
again.
go ahead, go to sleep.
No, I don't feel like going to sleep. I'm a night person.
Well, I'm going for breakfast.
I was going to say I'll make sure I haven't left anything behind, but then I didn't bring anything because I'm at home. This is what you've got to get used to. You're in your own home.
Thank you, Robin.
Watched the football match before I came here, Joe.
Thank you, Robin, for a very interesting and diverse, may I say, presentation.
Thank you very much indeed, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and everybody else that's been here.
Thank you. Well, come on back.
The event, and Robert's gone now. But I have a couple of photocopies that, or rather a couple of Indian items that he might be interested in seeing for his records, his files, that I'll send him within the next few days.
Oh, terrific.
Couple of what, Mike, did you say? A couple of what items?
Indian.
In what, made in India?
No, Nothing
No.
to do with St. Helena, nothing to do with POWs, nothing to do with wood carving, nothing to do with
But what
basically
are
your
they?
presentation. This is totally
Philatelic.
divorced from anything today.
No, I didn't get, what are they? Postcards? No.
Pardon?
What are the items?
Envelopes of postal history that Robert researches, collects, and is very, very knowledgeable about.
Right. I've got a
So-
few bits and pieces of postal history, but not a great deal. That's not. I belong to the Anglo-Boer War Philatelic Society. We meet. Well, we haven't met this year very much because of COVID, but we usually meet once or every 2 or 3 months, and then we have the AGM, which is usually held in the Midlands somewhere. They've usually got me organising the hotel for that and whatever. So, but that's always a good meeting. The annual general meeting.
It's
The
just a bit
Anglo-Boer
far for
War.
me.
Sorry.
It's just a bit far for me.
And where are you?
I'm in Thailand.
In
Oh,
Thailand.
boy.
Pardon?
Where did you say you were?
In Thailand.
Thailand.
Yes.
Phuket.
No, I'm not in Phuket.
I'm my ex-managing director and his wife live on Phuket. I love that little island. I love that little island. I usually go down and stay with them for 2 weeks once a year, but of course I haven't been this year and last year either almost. But, I love Thai food. That's probably my favourite food. Yeah, I love it. I used to go to see Thai International, and the guys there down on the way into the city, they've got a big new office there on the way down, haven't they, in Bangkok. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm in the
In the
Gulf.
outback.
The
Sorry.
Gulf of Thailand.
In the north.
No, the Gulf.
The Gulf of Thailand, down further down on the south coast. Yeah.
Yes. So.
And you've been out there
I
a
have-
while?
Pardon?
Been out there a while, mate?
Yes. 16 years.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I used to go once or twice a year to see Thai International when I was trying to sell them print.
Yeah.
But we used to do all the tickets, the bag tags and the airway bills for them. And then a lot of it got done locally. And these days, a lot of it's died out, isn't it? You know, all electronic these days. You book your ticket on the phone and you don't see a piece of paper at all.
And there's no aeroplanes anyway.
No, not at the moment, that's for sure.
Right.
But they're nice bunch of people. I got on very well with the Thais. Yeah. Kung Chor Weng Prakwatiwis. He was a guy I used to deal with down there. Yeah, lovely guy. Yeah, but
Well, are you going to let me feed my husband?
you're going to let me go to
I
bed?
have to sign off. I have to sign off so I can feed Keith.
I,
Just hit your delete button. Kill us
thank you,
all.
everybody. Thank you very much.
That's just so rude. You know, I hate when people do that to me, when there's you're talking and then the host just says, beep. You know, you're like, oh, but anyway.
Okay, well, I'm
So now,
stopping
Mike, you're a
talking.
dealer. Are you a
Pardon?
dealer?
Yes.
Are you a stamp dealer? I thought
Yes.
so, because we were just getting our auction catalog together and I thought I saw your list. And we opted not to mail it to Thailand because we didn't think it would get there.
Why not?
Well, because the auctions, it would be April 17th. And the last catalog we mailed to Thailand took like 2 months to get there.
Now you have to write the right address on it, Joe.
Well, yeah, that's one thing. Mail throughout the world is severely delayed.
Oh, at the moment, yeah, sure. With COVID, that's for certain. But,
And certainly mail is actually being held because there's so few flights and there's more important things to go on airplanes than
Mail.
pieces of paper, i.e. letters, catalogues, etc., etc. So all postal authorities are holding back mail. And that's something that we've all got to adapt to from now and certainly into the future.
There's an awful lot of work we've got to be done to bring it back to how it was before the COVID came, I think, that's for sure.
It will never come back.
No, there's a lot of businesses going out. And
I know that sounds very negative, but it will not. The world has moved on. We're in a different situation, and we have to adapt to what we've got. Plus, the internet is advancing, and technology in general is advancing so rapidly that it won't be long before we forget about what was a letter.
well,
It would be part of the history lessons in school.
I think with what we've done today, it just shows you how the world's moved on with regard to people talking to each other easily over the laptop, isn't it? You know, or whatever. Yeah, it's amazing how that side of things has moved on dramatically.
Yeah, it has. But getting back to Joan, you don't have to send me a catalogue a month before you've actually printed it to be sure that it reaches me, because I can look on the internet, which I do.
Yes. As soon as we post it. That's what, you know, we've been talking to a lot of the auction houses, and they've all cut back on their mailing of catalogs, like dramatically.
Oh, they
And
usually put it
we have
online.
too. Well, we do put it online, but Keith is old fashioned, so he's a catalog guy. So if a company doesn't send him a catalog, you know, he doesn't know about it. So he thinks that everyone else needs catalogs. And I told him, just give people $25 credits instead of mailing the catalog.
Before I got it, or how I got into the Prisoners of the Boer War was with walking sticks. I was a walking stick collector, and I had sticks going back to 1600, King George V stick, and all sorts of pieces. And I used to get Sotheby's catalogue, which was about this thick, and it must have cost them an arm and a leg to have the catalogue printed, not alone, let alone sending it around the world. You know, it's incredible, and all that side of it's basically gone now, I would think. Although people still like to have something in their hand to look at. But certainly the world has changed with technology, that's for sure. Did I ever think I'd be giving a presentation to people from Australia, Thailand, or wherever? You know, it's amazing. Technology.
Exactly. But
moved on very quickly.
Is the postal charges, certainly in Thailand here, have increased in the last.
Yeah.
But it's also doing people. It's also doing people out of work, isn't it? You know, the things we can now.
A big hike.
Yeah, we did too. So it used to cost us when we first started the Harmers International after he sold H.R. Harmer. It used to cost us maybe $12 to ship a catalog overseas. Now the last one, this last time here, we're looking at $35 to $40 on some of them.
4 times as much, nearly.
Mm.
Yeah,
and then it might not arrive.
Yes, that's it.
Well, this is the beauty of DHL, FedEx, etc. The mail very, very rarely does not arrive.
But it costs you, Jed. But it costs you an arm and a leg, Jed, for that service.
Well, it does cost, but it's reliable. And
Well,
Yeah,
and
you're
that's
sure, you're sure of getting it, that's the thing.
yeah,
That's
You're-
like
you're sure.
purchases. We'll only send purchases via Federal Express, or like a registered mail. We will not send just US mail or no signature, because you just need to be able to track it and keep it insured, regardless of whether it's a couple $1,000 lot or $100 lot. It just, when you bid on something, you expect to get it,
Sure.
irrespective of the price.
yeah.
So.
Everything that I send from here is trackable. Everything.
Yeah, I
And
don't,
that gives
I
me
don't
peace
buy
of
very
mind.
much overseas these days.
And it also gives the buyer some peace of mind.
Yeah.
Well,
But
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
think that's
sh-
important. We get a
I'm
lot
gonna
of
say-
buyers, they complain about the postal costs, and we don't mark up the shipping. And it's,
No, of course.
like, I don't know what to do.
Actually, I don't charge for shipping. I swallow it. But sometimes it hurts.
Well, as an auction house, we don't have, our profit margin is not like it would be if I were a dealer, where I could build it
Efficient,
into
yeah.
a price. So I could see telling our consigners that now, less the postage, but.
Yeah,
Well,
auction
Joan, I'm
buyers
soon going to
expect-
say thank you very much for allowing me to give the talk and go and see if my bed's ready for me. I'm feeling as if I should.
Good night, Robin. Okay.
Feels
Thank you
like
very
1 o'clock in
much.
the morning. Feels like 1 o'clock in the morning now.
Yes, it is, Robin. Okay. Take
So,
care.
We'll be in touch. Thank you very much indeed for the
we will.
opportunity. And I hope the
Okay.
audience wasn't too disappointed.
Yeah, thank you for seeing some diverse material.
We'll no doubt catch up with some of you again in due course.
Thank you, Robin. Thank
Pleasure,
you,
Joan.
Mike.
All the best. Night, Jess.
Thank you.
Stay well.
I will.
I shall try.
I'm going to find my leave button. So I'm going.
Okay.
Good night.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Joan. I'll switch my laptop off before I go to bed.
I'm
Bye.
ending the
Oh.
meeting.
It won't go off now.